Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast from still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me, first timer on this very program, Tony Basilio is here. Tony, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous, but look, I've got my stem thing. I don't know if you've ever used one of these, but I've got you can see my wires on my neck here. I've got my neck pain from playing music yesterday in the park for about 4 hours, and don't get old.
4 hours? What are you playing? Like, what are we playing here?
Well, I have a guitar, and I sat here, like I've got one in my studio here next to me, but
yeah,
I've always got something in my hands, and generally I'll go sit in a park and just get lost. It's my way of, it's like going on vacation.
Mm-hmm. So what you're just playing this whole time? Are you singing too, or are you just playing?
No, I'm just playing.
Playing. Who's your favorite band? Like, who do you play a lot? Like,
I love everything. I love every kind of music. I love everything, every genre, everything.
Very cool. What do you do when you get stopped though? Like, you do the Calhoun show, you're in the park, people know, and you talk about it on the program. So do you jump into those conversations? You're like, this is my zone out time. Or
No. I don't ever do that. But most people have a sense that, hey, this person's on their time. But every once in a while, somebody will stop, and the only time I'll do it is somebody wants to take up something with me that happened on the air, and I'll say, hey, call me tomorrow. Yeah. It's like my way of saying, hey, I've got office hours, and I'll be glad to hang out with you.
I love that. I mean, it's one of the, I think there's so many different things that I love listening to your show here in Tennessee and learning about you over the years since I've come up here. And one of the things that stands out to me, like doing the post-game shows, because they're just must listen to. And I'm always curious, like, so when you're like a highly emotional game, do you look more like you look forward more to a win where you know the fans are going to be happy and thrilled and a lot of the calls are going to be excited and there's just a lot of energy? Or is there some part of you that's like, because I'm doing this kind of thing, that's just to hear like the raw emotional, like, I can't believe we lost, I can't believe this happened? Which one do you get more energized by?
Well, I like the winning, and simply because there's been so much losing, and from a commercial perspective, it's very difficult to make a living when that team's constantly losing.
Yeah.
It's very hard. Plus, I went to Tennessee. Now, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that at times, with some of the losing, looking back on some of the things that's happened on our post-game show, some of the calls, people just venting their spleens, just how much it means to people, and just, it's why I'm doing it all these years later. I started doing a show every day in 1994, and I'm more energized now to do it than I was then. I just love what I do.
Why do you think that is?
God changed me. I used to want to be in a big market, when I was a kid, and then slowly but surely I came to a realization that those things don't matter. And what matters is getting up every day and truly waking up and going, you know what? I could easily be doing what my father did in his life, which was he was a mushroom grower, a mushroom farmer. And I worked with him when I was young. And he said to me, Tony, you're not cut out for this line of work. You won't make it, which is pretty brutal, but it's pretty honest. And he was right. And, but I often think before I put my headphone on, which is sitting right here, I always think to myself, if I'm going to be talking to people who, for a lot of folks, I'm a respite in their day. I'm a break. And I got to be professional, and I got to be on, and I got to put everything that's going aside in my life, everything that's going on, I got to put it down and put it away and let's go. And I love what I do. I love it more and more.
Do you see one of the things that I'm also fascinated by is like one of the things I think fans got. I mean, Heupel cleared a big bar, winning at Oklahoma and winning the way he did. It was a very different kind of win that fans were waiting for to see from Heupel on the road against a top 20 defense at night. It was a different kind of game that you were worried. There's still some part of you that's like, could this be Mizzou from 2023 all over again? Could this be? I think anyone who's still worried about the South Carolina stuff is just it's a completely different defense. Like I just don't think that's possible. Something like that happening again in the Heupel era. But it seems like the BVS here. I tell folks because like part of it is just it's popping up a little bit for Arkansas, and I'm like I don't think you have Tennessee's a 3-touchdown favorite at home next week against Florida. Like I understand the history of Tennessee. I understand that you've been down this road before. But to me, Tony, and I'm curious if you feel the same way, I just think this is the most sustainable, the most solid foundation that Tennessee football has had in the 21st century. I think what we're at right now on both sides of the ball is just, you have to embrace it. Just look at, like I was telling some family, it's like you look at baseball and basketball. I'm like, you've moved on, right? Like Dalton Knecht was the guy you thought he was going to be. You enjoyed that, right? Tennessee baseball just wrapped up the best 4-year run in program history. They just won a title. Like it's okay to just be like, Dondi, Randy, Danny, this is all working really well and we're in the best era. Don't overthink Arkansas. Enjoy Oklahoma, enjoy NC State, because right now you're the battering ram. Like you are battering most teams you're going to play because you've built this solid foundation. So it's just interesting to me. And I wonder if you've seen that because you've talked to so many people over the years, if they're growing more and more comfortable with the fact that like, oh, we're kind of in that tier now. Like we can win a national title in the next 2 years. That's where we're at in football.
I think that you're right. And I think there's always going to be, I think inside the whole Tennessee ethos in the time I've been in it, because I come from Philadelphia, that area, that whole region. And those fans are the same way. They're always waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah.
Josh Heupel, when you do what I do, you have to talk to people. You have to make friends, contacts that are internal in these programs. And, and you can't use everything.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of conversations just kind of stay in the background because they have to, but they're part of a tapestry and they tell a story. I don't hear anything negative about him from those folks. I heard all kinds of stuff about Dooley and about Butch Jones. And to some extent, I think Pruitt was probably on the whole a pretty good guy, but he just wasn't a head coach. And so when I think of Josh Heupel, the word that comes to mind for me is professional. And then he's credible, So I just think that college football is so cyclical that when you have as much interest as Tennessee has, eventually Tennessee was going to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I can't shake that's real interesting about this era, because I think we're in a really good period right now, and it's going to be good for a while, is Danny White tried to hire, as good as he is, he tried to hire Tony Elliott twice before he went back and, and got Josh Heupel. And I wonder in his mind, if he ever goes, why did I do that? Like, why didn't I just go get this guy from Central Florida and bring him on the airplane with me? And we just, did a package deal. And sometimes it's better to be lucky than good in sports. But yeah, I really do believe, Chase, at the end of the day that Tennessee's in a really good spot right now. Now, these games are week to week, and anything can happen in the Arkansas game. By the same token, I really do believe this Tennessee team is destined to do some pretty good things this year. It could get a lot more. I thought it'd be 10-2 at the beginning of the year, and I think 10-2 is a great year in college football these days. They could be better than that when it's all said and done.
I think this week is huge for that because, as you know, Tony, like Heupel's lost one home game since the start of the 2022 season.
Yeah.
You get 4 straight. This schedule's weird. Like this is a very weird schedule and kind of not conducive for a new redshirt freshman quarterback to get acclimated. Like everyone before the year was talking about Tennessee's schedule is pretty easy. And I was pushing back on that a little bit because I was like, look, I mean, NC State, top 25 team. It's a neutral site, but look, we saw what Pitt was for the first 2 years, and Heupel, like, they came in here and won, and then Tennessee had to target Cedric Tillman 37 times to steal one in Pittsburgh the following year. And you go to Oklahoma, now you go to Arkansas. The bye weeks, it helps a lot, and there's something I want to pick your brain about with that too here, but then you get 4 straight home games. Like, if you can just get through this, I know ESPN's Football Power Index has Tennessee as an 80% chance of making the CFP right now. I would push that up to 90 if they get through here, because Heupel has the combination. You talk about it's better to be lucky than right. I think it's so true when it comes to Heupel and Neyland Stadium, where Neyland is unique, and you walk in, there's not many Coliseum-like venues in college football, and Heupel's offense and this pass rush is just such a brutal combination. As you know, when you're in the building for this, like Spencer Rattler was completely overwhelmed. Max Johnson was completely underwater last year, and Tennessee's offense, we know, wasn't up to par as to what we've seen, the worst in Heupel's tenure as a head coach anywhere. And it didn't matter because they were so rattled and they were so overwhelmed by the experience that this combination is just so good that I just look at it and I'm like, you get 4 straight home games and then your last one is at Georgia. Like, you don't have to win. It might be one in your best interest. You kind of want to lose so you can avoid the SEC title game and avoid that extra game. Like, you're going to be in such a good spot, barring any significant injuries. If you win this one, I would posit that Tennessee is, barring significant injuries, a lock to make the CFP, right?
I would agree with that. The thing about college football is, though, and Heupel's had this propensity. You talk about the South Carolina game, but even down through the years, like in his league, Tulsa was kind of a bugaboo. And all these coaches are prone, because the game is so volatile from week to week. I do think, though, this year, when I look at the national landscape, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, but the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Texases, I put Tennessee in that class, the Ohio States, and there might be a couple more sort of floating around. Week to week, you pretty much know what those teams are going to do from a win-loss standpoint. And then the rest of the sport's totally volatile.
Yeah.
And so I think what you want to do is, obviously, you want to stay out of that. You want to stay out of the volatility side of things. I think it's really impressive that Tennessee's won this year with the running game. And I think it's really impressive that they've won the way they've won, because I agreed with your assessment before the year, which was, boy, this NC State thing, it's over. It's not in our stadium, and it's it's early in the year, and you got to break in a new quarterback, and that game was a breeze. And then the Oklahoma game, it's like, wow, it's a night game and it's their first SEC game. And the Oklahoma fan base was smart enough to know we don't have enough offense to stay in this game. They sold their tickets to Tennessee fans.
Yeah.
There was a tremendous contingent of Tennessee people in that game. In fact, on our post-game show, we heard from countless people that were at the game. That might have been the highest phone call volume we've ever had down through the years of doing what I do. Yeah, I was there. We were there. It was incredible. We were there. And so, and again, Oklahoma's got a knowledgeable fan base. And I go back to just the lay of the land in the league this year. Florida has cycled down. Auburn cycled down. LSU is just average. Those are teams that are going to compete year after year for playoff spots. And then, you look at the Missouris of the world. To your point, we're talking about making a playoff. I just look at Missouri and I go, okay, the wheels, I know they've got a nice team. They're not going to roll through the schedule 11-1. They're just not. I don't know where it's going to come from.
Might be this weekend against A&M on the road.
It could be anywhere. It should have been with Vanderbilt. Because I just don't think, I don't believe in him, and I don't believe in them to that extent. So I think a 10-2 Tennessee team is very comfortably in a national playoff. Even though at the end of the year, the schedule's going to look like it wasn't that good. But, it's not Tennessee's fault that Florida has quit playing football, which they have. I mean, that's what's happened in this league this year. It's really strange.
Well, you talked about this on the show today, and speaking of NC State, Tony, it was something that I jotted down because I thought this was fascinating. Because I wrote a long column today about how this game, the more I thought about it, the more I've dove into Tennessee, Arkansas, the more it reminds me of LSU in 2022, where I think a lot of fans looked at Oklahoma 2 weeks ago as the comparison. But to me, you come off a bye both weeks in 2022 and 2024. In 22, you beat Florida, and then you get a bye. Like, you get that emotional win. Florida has the ball with a chance to win late. Richardson gave you all kinds of problems in the second half. Like, Tennessee was lucky. Like, the building was, I don't know. It was one of the more absurd things, because I remember my wife and I were down there, and it was great. And Tennessee fans were like breaking up stuffed alligators, and on the
it was coming though.
Yeah, and I was like, y'all are out of your mind. Yeah, I was like, y'all are out of your mind. What are you doing? Like, yeah, it's coming. Yeah. Like, I just want to get out of here with a win. Like, I could not believe the confidence that Tennessee, but it was the offense, because Tennessee's offense made people believe so much, and it was so much fun. I was like, they're winning on fourth down. Like, Anthony Richardson, they cannot get off the field. This defense cannot get off the field. Like, they're going to stay in this game. Yes. And they did. And, that's kind of what we saw against Oklahoma. Was Michael Hawkins Jr. was staying on the field. He was a little bit frisky. They did not game plan for him the week prior. They thought it was going to be Jackson Arnold. Hawkins makes some plays with his legs, making something out of nothing. It was a little bit more like Tennessee felt good. They still took the foot off the gas, second half, whatever. But I look at that game, it's just Josh Heupel's return. It's so emotional. It's like he goes and does Morgan Wallen. I was joking with some friends here at Tennessee where I'm like, there was not a more tired man in Knoxville, Tennessee than Josh Heupel the night of the Morgan Wallen concert, because I was like, he must have gotten in at like 5 a.m. that night from that game, and it's such an emotional return, and he has to come out and get up for this concert and everything else. I'm like, that poor guy. I hope he got some sleep on Monday, because he went through a lot. And if they had to get right back up and then just play another big time SEC road game back to back, I think this game looks a lot more dicey. But I think that's how it was in Baton Rouge. Like, I understand the 11 a.m. kick was beneficial for Tennessee, but Heupel has only lost one game as a head coach coming off a bye, and it was against Memphis in 2020, and that was a weird COVID year anyway, so he tossed that out. Tennessee's been really good when they've come out of bye in the Heupel era, but he's had 2 weeks to look at this film. He got to watch Texas A&M Arkansas up close on Saturday. I look at this, and that's kind of how it was in LSU, where I think Tennessee fans felt good about LSU, and they were like, on paper, we really should. And you look at the turnover margins, where LSU had a huge problem. They were going for it on fourth down early in that game, and they fumbled the kickoff immediately. And it was a avalanche of disaster for LSU. But that's kind of was their moniker that year. And they had a mobile quarterback who you thought may stay on the field. He may be something, but he wasn't Jaden Daniels, the Heisman guy that year. This was very early on, just coming in from Arizona State. I think that's Taylon Green from Boise, where he can make some plays. He's flashy. He's a redshirt junior. Maybe he comes back, and if Petrino's back, and who knows what he looks like 2 years in the system with Arkansas. But the interceptions are there. The fumbles are there. The turnover margin is there. The only way that Tennessee can lose this game is if I think they lose the turnover margin like 3-1, 4-1, something, where Arkansas really mucks this up and really takes care of the ball in an uncharacteristic way. And I just don't see that happening. And I predicted at the time, I was like, I think Tennessee's going to blow out LSU in 2022. I didn't think they were going to blow out Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's defense is good. Oklahoma's got a top 20-ish defense. Like, they're good. Arkansas's defense, I don't buy at all.
No, this game's a kill job, Chase. You're exactly right. And it's a kill job because I think it's going to be similar to the LSU game, because Tennessee's going to work on their passing game this week.
Yeah.
So I had Watson Brown on a couple days ago, and he says that Nico has been stunted growth-wise to this point in the year by not having what he calls pressure reps. And essentially what he means by that is Tennessee's unplugging in these games so quickly that they've forgotten to really grow their passing game. And if you think about it, they have not looked like, this has not looked like, I mean, I know they're at the very top of the sport when you look at offensive numbers, but those numbers can be deceiving because, okay, they've had a couple really good pass plays during the year, and at Oklahoma, they hit a couple plays, but it wasn't like, and it has, even against NC State, it just hasn't been as dynamic, as fun, as wild as a couple of years ago. But really, that team didn't come into its own, to your point, offensively until they played that LSU game. So I think that's a pretty good analogy, man, because I think that's what we're going to see. I think this Tennessee team is going to rip that Arkansas team apart. And the quarterback from Arkansas, I think, is a real nice player. But a lot of these young guys don't respect their bodies. He better get on the ground against Tennessee, because this Thomas guy loves to hit people. This Tennessee defense loves to come up and hit. Peely's very salty as a linebacker, and he likes to hit people. I mean, I thought against Oklahoma, I thought Peely could have been called and would have at the NFL level for laying on that quarterback when he hit him and got him on the ground and he was rolling around on him. It's like, come on, it's like we sort of got the point here. These guys really love to hit, though.
The front seven's violent.
Better be careful. Green better be careful.
I mean, Jacoby is good for one of these, just blasts every game. Like, Jacoby's coming in. Like, he's ready to go.
Like,
that kid, it's just, they're ferocious. And like you said, like, and the thing about the defensive line, too, with Arkansas's offensive line, I think it's going to be, like, I don't know if you've seen this, too, but it's a hockey rotation for Rodney Garner on this defensive line. They're just rotating so much that you look at the snap counts. I love in my Sunday morning stat overview, like just looking at the PFF numbers, and I'm like, he played what? Jason Jenkins and Jackson Moy played how many snaps and had how many? And you're like, how is that even possible? It felt like he was in the game so much more, and it's because they were just rotating at will. And it's a unique thing that most teams in the country can't do, and Arkansas is just going to be overwhelmed. I think it's the night stuff. It's just the BVS a little bit. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Arkansas's got no chance in that game.
I don't think so either.
None.
What's been your biggest surprise through 4 weeks for the Vols football team?
The lack of, I would have thought Nico would be in a human highlight film to this point.
Why do you think he hasn't?
The lack of that from him, because I'll tell you this, I've never heard a guy talked about like him leading up to a season. I had people telling me last year, they said he's the best football player on our team right now. Now, we're not going to see him. He's not going to play. And so far, he has not looked like the best player on their team. But the issue with that is that he hasn't had to. And, in the Oklahoma game, they could have put more on him, but they chose not to because we can get in 12 personnel and run the ball and win the game. And the same thing with NC State, and Josh Heupel's been very purposeful the way they've kind of grown this guy. I just have a feeling that it's coming this week with Arkansas, because the truth is, unless your passing game, and it's not just Nico, unless your passing game is more dynamic, you're not going to stay on the field with Alabama, and you're not going to stay on the field with Georgia. Both those teams are very good, and one team had low 40s and one team had high 30s the other night. And both those teams are really good defensively. Both those teams have excellent athletes defensively, which tells me that when you get on the field with them, you better be able to connect on long plays, long pass plays, and do it consistently. And I think that's why we're going to see Tennessee's going to use the next 2 games, I think, to work on their passing game.
Well,
which I can't believe I'm saying that about Florida, but they're going to use Florida for that reason as well.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because I'm curious on your vantage point here, because I think Tennessee fans have freaked out about the Lance Hurd stuff, right? And John Campbell, snap counts, and just what that's going to look like for the rest of the year. I just wonder if it's a chicken and the egg type situation with Nico, with the receivers, with the tackles. How much of it, in your opinion, is Nico in the passing attack not being as terrific and prolific, I guess is the best way of describing it, this season versus 2022? How much of that is actually new? Because you talked about like Nico not having to do that, but there have been opportunities where Chris Brazzell has not jumped out that a lot of people thought he was. Dante Thornton's been great. I think, and he had, like you said, he had a big play taken away. He had probably the best catch from Nico when Nico's running to his left on that play that was called back, and it was a great throw, but it didn't count, so it doesn't go in the stat sheet. But Dante Thornton and Nico seem to have really good chemistry. Brew's good, in the best shape of his life. Brew's been solid for them, but Squirrel, I think, has taken a step back. You don't really know Chaz Nimrod. There was buzz this offseason. That hasn't really popped up. I don't know how much of it is the receivers, how much of it is Nico still learning and taking fewer chances, and like the staff, because he was taking some big chances in the opener. And Aaron Murray from the pod and over at TPL and everything else, former Georgia quarterbacks, was identifying like they're special throws, but sometimes they're going to get picked off. One of those got picked off against NC State, the one that was his fault over the middle, but he's going to make that throw sometimes. So you have to have that. It's the Peyton Manning thing where you need to throw some interceptions. Like, you need to see what you're capable of and what the limit is to your talent sometimes. Sure. And he has that, because Hendon Hooker, I love Hendon Hooker, and he was so important for this university for a lot of things. But the one thing Hendon Hooker was not going to do a bunch of off-platform stuff. He was not going to make throws in the run. When he took off out of the pocket, he was going to get 8, 10, 12 yards. And he was great at it. It's why Tennessee won 11 games, and he changed the program for the better. But that is something Nico can do, because Nico's keeping his eyes up. Nico's still looking to throw when he's off platform, and that's just something we haven't seen before. But are guys open? What do you think, Tony? I don't have a good answer here.
Well, you're right. No, you're right. And Aaron Murray, by the way, is so great. All that film stuff that he does is just so fascinating to me. And one of the points he made about Nico when they played Oklahoma specifically is that, because I was talking to people internally at Tennessee about this, and they say I don't know if they were surprised. That's too strong of a term. But one of their takeaways from the game was that he was not recognizing things at the line of scrimmage the way they thought he was going to, which is one of the reasons why they decided to inevitably get into 12 and just run the ball and just get out of there. Because if we sit this kid back here and we try to read and recognize, especially on RPOs, what this defense is doing, he's going to get hit. We're going to fumble balls. We don't need to do that. In terms of, like, is it more the pass protection? Already in that game, you were minus Hurd, you were talking about, and then Campbell goes out, and then all of a sudden, I understand why they did what they did in that game. It makes total sense to me. It did at the time, and it does looking back on it. The thing about Nico, though, and this passing game is I would have thought at this point in the year that they would have been more vertical. However, what was the point of throwing the ball long against Kent State? What's the point of playing Tennessee, Chattanooga? God bless them. What's the point in that? And then NC State, that's their whole game. They take that away from you.
Yeah.
So those are your 4 opportunities. And that's why I go back to, I just think Arkansas is a prime time opportunity for Tennessee just to pull the bubble wrap off of him, pull the bubble wrap off that receiving core and let it go. And the thing that I think is real interesting about the receiving core is they've said they're going to be purposeful this year in terms of getting more guys involved. I wonder if at some point they start to shorten the rotation. One thing I said on the air that I know is a fact, Dante Thornton was not a happy camper when they went out and got Brazel. He saw that as a slight to him. He was their high ticket item from the portal the year before, and he wasn't very good last year. But in Josh Heupel's own words, they had him out of position. They had him in the slot. He's a wide receiver. He doesn't belong in the slot. So McCoy, that's McCoy and some other guys. This guy has been pretty screws down and on point this year. And I think Arkansas is going to be a really interesting game, because I think Tennessee's going to explode on them. I really do.
And you did mention one guy who I just penciled in. I think Mike Matthews is going to come into the rotation. I think Mike's going to play. Though.
He missed too much time in the preseason. It's so hard. Look, just down through the years, I've seen these coaches. When a young guy misses camp time in the preseason, it's so hard for them to get back into the rotation. I've just seen it down through the years with a bunch of guys. And I think that's the only thing that's going to inhibit Matthews. But I mean, what are you going to, at this point in time, if I'm having trouble deciding between Brazel, who I've paid money to, and Thornton, who I paid money to last year, who's on my roster, And what am I going to do with Matthews? I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. But I do see what you're saying, and people I talk to say he's got extremely, extremely high, like high floor potential, extremely high floor.
I think he's the most talented receiver they've had in the Heupel era.
Yeah.
I mean, that catch he had, the touchdown catch against Kent State, was the catch of the year still for Tennessee.
Yeah, these kids are, mm-hmm.
He's going to be something. Final couple things here for you real quick,
sure.
Tony.
Yeah.
We talked about the offensive line a little bit, and one of the things that does just kind of give me pause, like the only thing that really gives me pause about Tennessee reaching the national championship and running the gauntlet of a long schedule is, do they have the depth? Because I think I don't think they do. And I think you're playing, and I think fans don't want to hear that because they're like, you see everything else, you're deep in so many different areas, and you see how deep the defensive line is, and you're like, why isn't the offensive line the same level of depth? But it's just not how it works. And also, you don't want to rotate. That's part of the deal. Is like, you want your offensive linemen to play a bunch of snaps. You don't want to be rotating like on the defensive line. You don't want them fresh like that. I just think the Campbell thing is going to linger all year. And I think you just got to hope Larry Johnson and Dane Davis continue to hold up and Larry continues to get better and more comfortable. Maybe Bennett Warren and Jesse Perry come along more as the season goes on. But I don't know. I just think you're going to have the offensive line question. And Tennessee, I think their ultimate destination to me still is just like you got to hope. You got to pray and hope that Lance Hurd and John Campbell give you enough snaps.
The thing that makes no sense to me is, and again, I said this the other day, I do not want to appear like I'm trying to be a smart ass with this or dunking on the offensive line coach, Ellerby. I really don't, because he's done a nice job with the transfers. But, man, these guys have really whiffed. I mean, they look like my Phillies. They look like a team that struck out 18 times in a night.
Yeah.
When it comes to getting any kind of production at all out of freshmen they've brought on campus. It's uncanny. Addison Nichols of Arkansas is the only player that they've recruited that's playing SEC snaps. I mean, he's in another roster. That doesn't make any sense. They're 1.5 injuries away. 1.5 injuries away from being in real trouble on their offensive line.
And it could torpedo the whole season. Like, I just think
you won't be cocky. No, you're exactly right. That's the point. I mean, what you bring up is really interesting because, and I don't understand how you can be 4 years into something and not have anybody that can play that you've signed. I mean, look, if you think about it, and I'm not trying to be ugly, I'm really not, but Mays is a guy that played for Pruitt. Campbell's a transfer. The kid from Texas is a transfer. You were talking about before. Lance Hurd came from LSU. Dane Davis is a guy. He's another Pruitt guy. I mean, where are your players? You've been here 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, am I being ugly? Is that ugly or is that accurate or what is that?
I guess the one thing it's so weird because he did, like, Darnell Wright's not a top 10 pick without Ellerby. Like, that's the other part of it is.
Yeah, but he inherited him.
He did.
You're right.
That's what's so weird, and it's why it's so complicated. Yeah, it's so complicated talking about Ellerby because I think the offensive line is good. Like, Tennessee runs the ball efficiently every year. Yeah. Like, Ellerby is a good coach, but I think it's the identifying before they get there is the
issue.
Yeah.
There's got to be something to that, Chase, because, again, potentially you talk about things, and again, I'm with you. I think this team is probably going to finish 10-2 and make playoffs. If I had to guess from here, I think they're going to lose to Georgia, lose to Alabama. However, that is a great floor. If I'm telling you, if that happens, that's a great season. That's a great floor because they get into a playoff. They get maybe beaten up a little bit by those two teams. I think they're both going to be close games would be my guess. And I think they would go into the postseason with an opportunity to advance and win some games and make some noise, which would be a great thing. But, man, that offensive line and not having numbers in this league is a little scary. But, the truth is if you took two starters off Georgia's offensive line, they'd be in trouble. If you took 2 starters off Alabama's offensive line, they'd be in trouble. 2 starters off Texas' line, they'd be in trouble, which is what happened with the Vols with Oklahoma. So to be fair about it, that is the fair side of it. But Oklahoma, Alabama, none of these teams will be able to tell you, well, maybe Oklahoma could because they had to go into the portal in the offseason. But teams that are at the top of the deal don't have what Tennessee has, which is none of these guys are guys I've recruited, and I've been here 4 years. It's just weird.
And that's why I think next year is, I don't want to say make or break, but I think will be the ultimate identifier, because David Sanders, you're not going to get a more talented, ready-made guy like the Darnell Wright type, right? Like he's getting a Darnell Wright type in immediately. Yeah. If that doesn't go well, or if he's not starting right away, then it's like, problems. Okay, David Sanders should be solid and ready to go. Like that's the one I have circled, where it's like if David Sanders is not a plug and play.
True freshman though, man.
Yeah.
True freshman's tough. This is the thing about this league that I've come to appreciate down through the years is when you start talking about line play, you're talking about the closest thing to the NFL.
Yeah.
That's what this league is. And if that's the case, true freshman, Sanders is really, I think, he's got special ability. And the backstory on him is great. How Grant Williams gets an assist plus in that.
Mm-hmm.
An assist plus with David Sanders.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, we'll take it.
It's awesome.
And I should also point out, I like Bennett Warren a lot. I like Satterwhite a lot. I think this is the most talented group he just brought in. This 2024 class is the most talented one. I think you could have some starters, but you're asking a lot of maybe true sophomores or redshirt freshmen to step in, because Tennessee's going to lose Cooper next year. They're going to lose
portal. They got to go to the portal.
But I just, last year of Nico, because if everything goes well, Nico's gone after next year.
Yeah.
The expectations are going to be sky high again. You saw you don't want to be in the business in year 5 of having to just patch together 3 or 4 offensive linemen to start with the high expectations, a Heisman type quarterback.
It's where they are.
And that's not a comfortable place. Like you're seeing with Ole Miss and everyone.
Again, when you don't grow linemen, it's where they are and that's kind of my point. And I'm not trying to belabor it, but Addison Nichols is the answer to the trivia question. He's their one signee in 4 years that's playing SEC snaps. People don't like that. They don't want to hear that, but it's reality. And, and I'm not saying get rid of the offensive line coach. I'm not, because it's just indicative of the era we're in. And I was talking to Adam Sparks, the News Sentinel, about it on the show this week. And he goes, look, I know Glenn Ellerby. He went to MTSU. I covered them. I covered him when he played. My first newspaper job. He goes, I've got such an affinity for him. He goes, but that stat is crazy, and it's accurate. And, it could end up troubling before it's all said and done if you don't stay healthy. And to your point, I don't see any way next year Tennessee isn't portal heavy on their offensive line. They're going to have to be. And the way the game is now, these staffs are so bloated in college football, and they've got so many people on staff that they've got guys whose chief role is to take other rosters apart in the league and scout them and say, okay, who over here can help? So everybody knows who everybody else has, and they're talking to these people.
I don't think Tennessee's in a Florida State situation or anything like that, or an Ole Miss situation, but it is it's kind of like a blessing. I shouldn't say blessing in disguise. It's just where Tennessee is, it's the only question mark we really have on this roster. I don't have questions at the back end. I don't have questions at the front 7. I don't have questions with the tight ends. This is the best tight end room Tennessee's ever had. I don't have questions about running back. Cam Selden hasn't been available, and you haven't missed a beat with Deshaun Bishop.
No.
They're fine. Nico, more than fine. Wide receiver, they're going to figure it out, and they're going to do enough to make that all work. It's the only question that could really torpedo this season from getting where Tennessee wants to be is the offensive line. It's just real. The reality is it's a week-to-week thing with the health of this offensive line, and it can drastically change where Tennessee can go.
And the other reality is that everybody in the league, Georgia and Alabama, are all in the same boat.
Yeah.
And it's because of the portal. But again, those teams have kids they've developed that they brought in through the high school ranks that they've developed. What they've done here, and they've gotten by with it so far, it's like you were just saying. I mean, the truth is it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not.
And
because you're going to wake up some years, if you keep doing it, you're going to wake up some years and Chase, you're going to go get 3 lemons out of the portal. And if you get 3 lemons out of the portal,
the season's over.
Your season's over.
And that's the reality. But I also, in the optimistic side, I think David Sanders will be good right away.
Yeah.
I think Lance Hurd will be back, and that should be solid. Year 2 in the system. That's 2 5-star tackles. And then Satterwhite, I like Warren. Like I said, Max Anderson, we'll see. Gage Ginther. Like, I think there's enough talent where, like, come on now. There's too much in the pipeline now where if you mix and match, like, next year is a huge year for me because I think there is enough there where if you can't find some starters, at least 2 from this class or these 2 back-to-back classes, there's a real problem in the recruiting and the identifying talent, that kind of thing. There just is.
No question. Yeah. If we're having this conversation a year from now, Houston and Knoxville, Tennessee, we have a problem.
It's going to be an interesting spring. I can't wait for the conversations about that because I think the position battles, especially and how they handle the portal, is going to be huge. Final thing here, and I'll get you out of here, Tony. Fact or fiction? I think we might disagree on this. I think Tennessee is a better matchup for Alabama this year than Georgia still. When I watched that game and when I was taking notes, the thing that Georgia got killed by from Alabama is how Tennessee used to get crushed by the Matt Corrals, the Emory Jones of the world. Keenan Peely, Arian Carter, James Pierce, Joshua Josephs is lined up all over the place. They're fresh. They're healthier than Georgia in their front seven. The way that Alabama schemed up Georgia in that first quarter to score on their first 4 possessions, I don't think can happen against Tennessee. I don't think that's a possibility. I don't trust Alabama's offensive line the same way I still trust Georgia's offensive line. I look at that game, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, Bama's the best team in college football. And Tennessee, I feel if you're a Tennessee fan, you feel worse about that game in 2 weeks than you do going to Athens because Georgia gets in the big hole. Carson Beck looks bad, this, that, and the other. I just don't think that's real. I think Milroe is going to have a lot of problems still. I think the turnovers are there. I mean, we've seen the snap stuff. Like, Alabama was in a dogfight against a USF team that got obliterated by Miami. Alex Golish, he's really good at playing Alabama for some reason, but they were in a dogfight. Like, this is going to be more of a Jekyll and Hyde team than I think people anticipated. All eyes were up. They were hyped for that game. It was at home. Tennessee is Jalen Milroe, I don't think is going to be able to put the team on his back like Bryce Young did. Because what Bryce did with Tennessee's pass rush 2 years ago was he was making something out of nothing. I mean, that play in the end zone where he picks up the ball, the ball goes flying over his head, it's an incompletion. Most quarterbacks, like, you're kicking out of the end zone or you're diving, like, that is a disaster for most quarterbacks. Bryce Young picks it up and makes something out of nothing and lives to fight another day. Bryce Young had a Heisman type game against Tennessee. Like, he was all over the place, making play after play, taking huge shots. He was huge for them. I don't think Milroe is that kind of player. I don't think Milroe is going to be able to run. Tennessee's run defense is so good and so disciplined. Their eye discipline, especially with Peely, Carter, T-Lander, and everybody. I don't think they are a good matchup for Tennessee. I think Tennessee's going to be okay there. I'm still pretty optimistic that Tennessee's going to beat Alabama. The thing on the flip side, though, with Georgia, if Tennessee's receivers are not at a point where they can start getting open against physical corners and physical safeties on the back end, Georgia's going to be able to do what they've done the last 3 years, where they're not going to blitz. They're going to sit back and they're going to allow their corners to just shut you down. And I think it's unfortunate, but they just have, since that first half against Georgia in 2021, Tennessee's done nothing against this Georgia secondary. And I just think that's what's going to happen again, unless these receivers, at least one of them, either Brazel, Thornton, Brew, like, unless we see a very different wide receiver core getting open by Georgia, I don't think they can win. I just don't think the way Tennessee plays can win that style against Georgia.
Well, I'll work my way backwards. The Georgia deal is tough for Tennessee because they can beat you with 5 in the box.
Yeah.
So it's a lot like Oklahoma. And, and again, when I watch our guy and he goes, and he starts counting, and, Aaron Murray the other day was going, okay, there's 5 in the box here. And then Oklahoma does that deal where they kept walking their safeties up, and by the time you adjust and you're a kid, hopefully Nico's at that point in time he's a little more developed. But I still think that's a tough matchup. You and I will disagree on Alabama from this standpoint. We haven't seen anybody challenge our secondary. I know it's like you were saying, they've arrived. I don't share that opinion because I have to see it.
Who are you most worried about in the secondary? Because Jamad, I think, has arrived. I think Jamad is legit.
Well, I just think Tennessee's safety play is sketchy. They think it's sketchy. They think it's worrisome. And we haven't seen anybody expose them. And everybody in college football makes plays. I mean, like, when you play these elite teams, these receivers, this Williams kid is an elite talent. He's 17 years old, which is crazy. There are 3 receivers in college football that are, as far as I'm concerned, in that class that are elite players. Number 8 from Auburn. Nobody knows. I don't even know his name, but I know his number. Nobody knows his name because he has a quarterback to get him the ball. That's coming next year. The freshman from Ohio State's insane. And this Williams guy from Alabama those 3 guys are like from another planet, as far as I'm concerned. So until Tennessee functions in their back 4, back 5 against an offense like that, to me, it's, you got to show me. I love it. I love your enthusiasm. I love all that stuff. And look, the games in our building, that is certainly going to be a major factor. That'll be as fired up a crowd as we've seen in there in a long time, because now we have this playoff. Now it's real. Now the opportunity to be a national contender is in front of this team. 2 years ago, when those 2 teams played, and people would say, well, I knew the Vols were going to win. I knew the Vols. No, you didn't.
No,
you didn't.
No.
This year, though, you think the Vols are going to win. And I don't. Look, when we get to that week, I'll be practicing party discipline, and I'll be screaming that Tennessee's going to win the game like the next person is. But I got to see Tennessee's pass offense grow. And I got to see somebody challenge their pass defense. And the weird thing about this season, and I'm not complaining about it, but the weird thing about this season is Tennessee's played 4 football games, and I haven't seen a quarterback yet that they've played against that can throw a ball. Have you?
No.
But
don't you look
weird.
It's weird. And we kind of are going to see it on Saturday. Taylor Green's kind of hit or miss.
If he gets a chance to throw, if he gets a chance to breathe, but he's not got a chance.
No, DJ Lagway has the arm against Florida, like he has the arm, but I don't think their offensive line's going to hold up. I think Tennessee's just going to. But that's, I think, a good way of putting this back on Bama, Tony, and why I feel better about it is I don't think Miller, like those downfield shots to Ryan Williams, I don't know if you're going to have the time. Like, I don't know if Bama's going to have it.
No, he's really grown and he's improved. And I realize against Georgia probably should have won that game. I realize that after allowing him to have a big lead. But boy, Milroe is so much better than he was 2 years ago. Just to show you how you can grow a guy. And DeBoer has modified what they want to do.
Yeah.
They really modified what they want to do to make the offense more conducive for Milroe. But I will say this, Tennessee's defensive line, since I've been here, and I've seen some great players come through here, that's the best defensive line Tennessee's ever had.
Yeah.
And it's not so much the first 4, it's the first 12. I mean, I've never seen anything like that here. And to do that in an era where you got free transfers, they've got guys, their 8 to 12 are good enough to get on the field for most teams in this league.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Jason Jenkins had 5 snaps and had a safety and a TFL.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
That's my thing. That's why I feel pretty good. Is I just don't think what we've learned through 4 weeks. Maybe I'm wrong here, Tony, as we get you out of here. I just don't think this secondary is going to get challenged as much as people might have anticipated before the year because the front seven's too good. I think if they're healthy along the defensive line, healthy at linebacker with Peely and Carter for the majority of this season, I just think offensive line play is down as a whole across the league, that you are not going to be able to dial up these downfield shots against Tennessee all that much. They're going to have to pick their spots, and they'll have to hold up 2 to 3 times against Alabama, maybe 5 if they can get. I just don't think Alabama's offensive line is going to win. I don't think they're going to want to put Milroe in that spot where he's getting crushed by Omar Norman Lott coming up the middle.
You're I've seen this Alabama thing down through the years, so I hope you're right. What you're saying makes sense to me. I still have to see Tennessee's vertical passing game arrive consistently, and then I've got to see their pass defense against somebody that can throw a football.
I think it's Georgia. I think that's when we see it. I think Georgia is when we actually see it with Carson Beck, because that offensive line, Tennessee has not been able to win in the trenches against Georgia. If Carson Beck's able to sit back in the pocket, can their defensive backs hold up against Georgia?
You're right, and this team goes 11-1. That will be an all-time great regular season around here.
Yeah.
For this guy to inherit this job 4 years ago and be in the spot they were in and have the season they had 2 years ago and then turn around with a redshirt freshman quarterback and go 11-1, that would be one hell of a coaching job. 10-2 would be a great coaching job in my mind.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Tony, what can the good folks check out from you over at the Tony Basilio Show, TonyBasilio.com, the T Club, everything else this week?
Yeah, so I make it nice and simple. tclub.team is where I'd like to direct people. And what we do is we just have a great time every day. And we celebrate this college football and this Tennessee experience, the good, the bad, the ugly sometimes. But we try to do it passionately as well. So, and Chase, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me on. I'd love to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
And my best to you, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Like I told you in the email, it's really difficult in our business these days to get in the arena. A lot of people get in it. It's very hard to stay in it. Yeah. So I just encourage you to keep fighting, man.
Well, I appreciate that, Tony, and we'll check back in again soon, and we'll do this some more. So thank you so much.
You ask awesome questions. You're a conversationalist, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely, I want to be fun. I don't like the interview thing. I just don't look at your notes like you're reading off questions. That's not me at all. No. We're gonna have a conversation and get to know each other, and it's great. So Tony, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the game on Saturday, and we'll check back in again soon.
Thank you, my friend.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.